Hello, and welcome to Witchy Woman Podcast. I am your host, Danae Sweet, and this is Season 5, Episode 7. Today we're going to talk about familiars, both animal allies and spirit familiars. We're going to go over what they are, types of them, how we can work that into our witchcraft practice if you want to. But first, I had therapy today, and I was talking to her about things that make me feel better, and therapy makes me feel better. Meditating makes me feel better. Those kind of things. And also that I am someone who processes their feelings out loud. It's easier for me to wrap my brain around complex things that are happening in my life or, trauma or whatever it is. If I talk it out, like I am very much somebody who needs to talk. Obviously, I have a freaking podcast, right? But I was telling her, like earlier in the podcast's journey, I spoke a lot about my personal life. I used the podcast as a way to talk about how hard things are sometimes, how great things are sometimes. And it was very therapeutic for me just to get it out of my head and out into the ether. I didn't do it for attention or to ask people to feel sorry for me. I really loved just airing my shit out. And sometimes I probably was an oversharer and shared way too much and way too intimate of things that were going on in my life. And after the break I took, I was a little weary to share my personal life online and on this podcast to the general public, just because it is something I'm doing on purpose. I am making a podcast on purpose, right? So I'm out there, and any kind of criticisms that I get, I open the door for those. I totally get that. But sometimes sharing is vulnerable, and you do get a lot sometimes of negative feedback, and that affects my mental health. And so we were talking today in therapy about how I can find a balance where I can share a glimpse into what it's like to be, which I wanted to share. I wanted to share what it's like to be a witch out in, western Nebraska, where, most people wear cowboy boots and spurs to lunch. And being a witch isn't exactly the most popular thing you can do. And she encouraged me to maybe do that again. And so I want to share some things that are going on in my life that pertain to my practice and my witchy ass self. First of all, I'm trying to figure out if it is a good idea for me to go to vending events this spring and summer, and some in the fall. I have the opportunity, finally, now that my health is becoming manageable, I will be able to travel and I'll be able to do things again. Last year, pretty much my entire life was on hold. The last 3 years for me has been that way, really bad. But last year was, my body got to a point where it could not handle small trips. It rebelled in awful ways. So, I've got a handle on those things, and I really would like to vend again. I want to go read palms and cards, and maybe even peddle some of my witchy wares, And there's a couple Ren fairs, and there's some really fun spiritual fairs that I would really like to go to, as well as farmers markets. Why not? Why can't I go to a farmers market? I think that if there are people there selling their candles and their, lotions and things like that, there's no reason why I, as a witch, couldn't sell my oils and candles and things like that. So these are things that I'm pondering. Okay, so you're listening to this podcast, you have access to the internet. So I'm sure you know or have some kind of idea of what's going on in the world and in the U.S. It's becoming very tense. There seems to be a really big push for violence here lately. And so my pondering is, will it be safe for me to go to these events? And this is prompted by my husband's worries for the most part. He's very protective, and he's worried that because at a lot of these local events, I'll probably be the only, weirdo. I'll be the only witch selling my wares or maybe doing divination, and that could put a giant target on my back, which I totally understand. I don't foresee that being a problem. However, my husband is worried about it. I live in the middle of fucking nowhere, and there really isn't the tensions that I'm seeing online in large cities is not reflected here as far as the violence. Definitely tense. But I still feel like I should be able to go out and do a vending event, no matter what I'm selling. As long as they approve me for the vendor on the vendor list, there shouldn't be a problem with me setting up and being there. Also, I'm acutely aware that I'm very privileged. I'm a white, straight passing person, and I don't have to worry about having a target on my back normally because of that privilege. And I wanted to take a minute and say, I totally recognize that most people can't just take their target off, and blend in. Whether I'm wanting to blend in or not, I have white privilege, and I think that should be noted. So do I stay home and not go to these events and set up, or do I say screw it, like I'm going to live my damn life and set up at these events? I'm probably going to do the latter, to be honest. My husband is probably not going to be happy about that, but he's very supportive, and he'll be there to do his knight in shining armor thing and protect me. So I just wanted to air that out, because it's been something I've been pondering, like, do I go? Do I not go? I really want to go, because my life's been put on hold for so long because of my stupid health shit that I've had going on, that I'm really excited to get back out there. And I love reading palms and cards for people at events like that. Like, that is the most fun. You get to meet so many cool people, and their stories are amazing. And, I feel like whoever comes to my vendor tent, like, they're called to come there. So there's a reason. And whether I see 5 people or 50 people, I enjoy all of it. So I'm excited, honestly. Like, now that I'm talking this out, because I said I process things as I talk. I'm really realizing now in this moment how excited I am to get out there and do these things. So maybe that's what I'll do. I am part of a marriage, and I do need to talk it over with him and like really get him comfortable with it. And if he's truly like freaked the hell out, then obviously I'm not going to like make my husband worry like that. Like, if he's feels that strongly, I will honor his intuition just like he honors mine. But I really think that we're just going to go do this. I want to talk about something else as well. And I know I can't be the only one going through this. And this is something that I really I needed to work out in therapy today. And I don't know if I have worked it out yet, but I definitely got a lot of it out of my head. But how fucking difficult is navigating friendships right now. With my obviously left-leaning friends, it's not a big deal. Like, we're loud about who we support online. We want to be allies for marginalized communities. So we, in a small town, in a small area like Western Nebraska, I feel it's important for me to be overtly anti-MAGA so that people out there know that there are people that support them and are safe. Like, I'm an ally to those marginalized communities, and it's important to me to do that. But the friends that aren't as loud, there are some I know are just afraid, and they have very conservative family members, and they just don't want the drama. Totally fucking get that. Totally get that. Then there's the ones that I've lost completely because reasons. They turned out, what do I want to say? How do I want to word this without sounding like a complete asshole? I don't think that we should cut off everybody in our lives that don't believe the same things as us. However, there have been a handful of friends that I'm no longer friends with. And let's just say there were more reasons than who they voted for. Anyway, but it definitely, the whole who you supporting politically definitely started the questioning and the conversations. Anyway, how are we dealing with all of this? Then we have the ones that are like, are they? They're on the fence. They talk about, how bad it is to cut people out of your lives just for not believing the same things. And, we say, oh, it's a moral difference, not I like the color green and you like the color blue. Like, it's not the same. Like, opinions are one thing, morals are another. And there's that argument. And how are we dealing with those friends who they don't outwardly support what's going on, but they also don't condemn it. And then it gets confusing because some of these people that are on the fence like that, or they seemingly are on the fence because it's social media. Most of these relationships, most of the communication that we are doing is through a messaging app or watching what they post on social media. How are we dealing with the fact that some of these people have been a kind, empathetic, compassionate person, and you've seen that they are, emotionally intelligent and compassionate, and they genuinely care about people, but they don't seem to be against what's happening? How are we reconciling those friendships? Because I'm having a really, really hard time. My go-to knee-jerk reaction is just to not be friends with them anymore, because I don't want to be a bad ally to my other friends either. But I haven't seen this person or these people post a bunch of MAGA stuff either. So it's very muddy. How are we dealing with this? I cannot be the only one. I'm trying to be very careful where I spend my attention, who I open my life up to, where I spend my money. I think that's all very important right now because it's the little things that add up. We can't do it. Out here, I live literally so far from anywhere. I have to drive an hour to get my haircut or to do any kind of real grocery shopping. And there's no big towns that have big protests and, things that I could do as far as that goes. So I feel like where I spend my money and where I spend my time and who I open up my life to are ways that I can contribute to what's happening in the world, even if it's in my own little bubble, right? So I guess what I'm getting at is that I am tired. I'm exhausted from the mental shit that we have to deal with on a daily basis. And then we have our interpersonal relationships, and that sucks. So what I've been doing, what I'm taking 13 minutes and some odd seconds to get out is that on Wednesdays, Mercury rules Wednesday, right? Mercury is communication. So I have been lighting a candle and really focusing on bringing in that mercurial, good God, I can't even talk, the energy from Mercury. So that I can communicate better. Obviously, today's candle isn't working. So I can communicate better with my friends and also interpret communication and have the discernment that is required to navigate all these damn twists and turns in all of our interpersonal relationships we have going on right now with our country and the world's on fire at the same time. So I am intentionally doing that every Wednesday. I have a candle. I dressed it in oils that I feel associate with Mercury and a couple herbs as well. And then I've carved the symbols in the side of the candle. I light it and I meditate. I put on some YouTube meditation music and for communication. If you just type in frequency meditation frequency for communication, type that into YouTube and something will come up. And I just meditate for as long as I can, which right now, because I have the attention span of a fly, maybe 5 minutes. So, highly recommend doing something intentional if you're also having a hard time, because I am starting to see the things that I'm doing that is wrong, that are the wrong choices, and I am being a little more self-aware of how I'm interpreting things, as opposed to how the author of posts intended the post to say. Like, the intention and how I perceive it can be two completely things, and I'm trying very hard now to see through that and to understand that. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. This is my first in-country war, civil unrest / war / whatever the fuck is happening. I don't know. Does anybody have a fascist regime takeover? I don't know. But this is my first one. I don't know what to wear. I don't know what to say. I'm not really sure what's going on. But anywho, I'm trying. All right, enough of Dear Diary stuff. Let's go ahead and get to the class. The class today is Animal Allies and Familiars. So we're going to dive into the wild and witchy world of animal magic, how witches have worked with animals as allies throughout history, and how we can honor those connections in our own craft. So let's tackle animal allies first. So animals have been part of spiritual and magical practices since early civilizations were even formed. The ancient civilizations that I can touch on really quick would be Egyptians and their sacred animals. They had cats and bastet and ibises with thoth. And I looked up on the internet how to say thoth. And they said it was like oath, but with a th at the beginning. So please don't come at me. And that's the ibises, that's like a bird. Norse shape-shifting and animal totems had Odin and his ravens and Freya and his cats. Celtic animal lore involves stags, boars, owls, those kinds of things. And something that I found when I was looking this stuff up was, it's really sad. During the European witch trials, animals were targeted as partners in witchcraft, and they were often harmed or ended because of it. So some of the examples of targeted animals are cats, toads, and rabbits. And they were demonized by the church. My daughter's calling. Hang on. I'm back. I love that she still wants to talk to her mom, even though she's an adult and doesn't have to. I love that. I love her. All right, let's get back to the episode. Okay, where was I? Oh, so I was saying that in Europe, during the witch trials, rabbits, toads, and cats very much were thought of as being associated with witches and were often harmed or killed in the process of all of that, which really is gross and sucks. Some other animal ally stuff in history would be connected to the shamanic traditions that are worldwide. So many cultures, such as the Siberian, Mongolian, and indigenous tribes across the globe, viewed animals as mediators between humans and the spirit world. So this type of animal involvement is found across many cultures around the world throughout the entirety of our human existence. And so how you want to use an animal ally in your practice could have a lot to do with what your lineage is. So if you know your heritage, what culture you come from, I would suggest Googling that. Google whatever your heritage is and animal allies and spirituality. I have a lot of German in my heritage on one side of my family. So one thing I could do would type in German spirituality and animal ally work. And it hopefully will come up with some stuff. So I would highly recommend that you do something like that for yourself to see if there's any particular tradition that you could connect to. If you have no idea what your heritage is, you can still do this sort of thing, work with an animal ally. And this could be done in many ways, but again, I want you to be careful about cultural appropriation in this particular subject. And so now we have reached the part in my in my talk that we talk about appropriation and the term spirit animal. I want to address this because it's important. It's important that we respect other cultures and are watching what we say. I want to address the term spirit animal and how it can be a term that is deemed cultural appropriation to use it. The term spirit animal is rooted in specific indigenous traditions, especially Native American and First Nations. So using it casually like, oh my God, pumpkin spice is my spirit animal, is disrespectful, okay? And it just flattens sacred cultural practices. Like, let's just not do that. You can say other things. So if you remember back to the class that I taught about spiritual appropriation, this is a perfect example. So a perfect example of that would be like to see super white witches use the term and teach classes on what they call spirit animals or even animal totems. If you don't know your heritage, let's not use those words, okay? I am mayo-flavored brethren, and we do not use those terms, okay? It's not only disrespectful to the cultures from which these terms originated, but using those terms to make money is, one, gross, and it's 100% cultural appropriation. So I don't want to see anybody that looks like me without any ties directly to that culture teaching a fucking course about animal totems or spirit animals. And I see that on the regular. And I just roll my eyes. You can't tell them anything. It's really like you can talk to them till you're blue in the face and they will think they've done nothing wrong because, oh my God, it's just a word. Well, words fucking matter, okay? So if you're talking about working spiritually with an animal, then let's be respectful and call it like an animal ally or maybe even an animal guide. If anybody has any other suggestions that would like to say something, email me, DM me, help me out. How witches can be respectful. So, number 1, acknowledge where practices come from. Number 2, learn from indigenous voices rather than co-opting. And 3, avoid claiming closed practices as your own. If you are not a part of that heritage, that is not for you. Okay, so enough of that. Let's talk about familiars in the context of like historical witches and modern witchcraft. So let's talk about the European witch trials again, just real quick. So in the witch trial records, familiars were described as imps or spirits taking the shape of animals, and those animals were usually cats, toads, hares, or rabbits, or birds. They were seen as demonic by the church, but witches described them as being helpful spirits aiding in spell work or protection. One of the Pendle witches that was accused of witchcraft was said to have a spirit familiar that showed its form as a hare. And yet, some had familiars that showed their form as deceased humans. And there was one other Pendle witch that had a familiar that she called Fancy, and she said that it was a man. So today, most witches use familiar to describe a spiritual entity, sometimes taking animal form, that chooses to work alongside them. Not every pet is automatically a familiar, and a familiar is more of a magical partner than just a beloved animal companion. So some witches, not all witches, but some witches believe that an animal is a familiar if it comes to you, not if you go buy it or go adopt it. So think like stray cat that wanders to your back door and hangs out that you take in, that sort of thing. I am not saying that Fido, your beloved pet, can't be your animal familiar, okay? I'm just telling you what people are saying for definitions, different definitions of this word on the internet. So don't come at me. Okay, so that would be the definition or definitions of a familiar if it was like an animal familiar. Okay, let's talk about the term animal allies, which is just another way you can describe this. Animal allies are typically beings, whether physical or spiritual, that offer guidance, wisdom, or protection. They can appear in dreams. Maybe have repeated encounters with them in nature, or symbolic forms. It's as far as your tarot or oracle decks, maybe even a vision. So this is what the internets and different books that I've read say the key differences are between a familiar and an animal ally, okay? Familiars are more about personal working relationships in magic. And animal allies are more about receiving lessons, signs, and guidance, sometimes long-term, sometimes temporary. So say for the last 2 weeks, I have been seeing spiders everywhere in my house. It could mean that it got cold outside and they came in because it's fucking cold. Or if it's just everywhere, if I'm seeing them in my house, if I turn on the TV and it's a documentary about spiders, if I open Facebook and there's an article about spiders in Australia, if I'm seeing them everywhere, I'm going, okay, what the fuck, spider? And then I'm going to go through my books and figure out what that means to me. I'm not going to go over interpretations of seeing animals because there's a whole bunch of different cultures and a whole bunch of different interpretations based on the context of your spiritual practice. If I'm a pagan honoring, I don't know, the Morrigan, and I see a shitload of crows, that's going to look different for me than an atheist witch that that sees a bunch of crows. It's going to mean something different. Does that make sense? Okay, so now that we kind of have a little bit of working knowledge on what those terms mean and, how there's a little bit of overlap, but let's look at practical ways to work with animal allies. So how do you do that? So one way is to use meditation or visualization journeys to meet your allies. Setting a time where you won't be disturbed. Set your intention of your meditation to meet that animal ally and receive a message from them. Maybe try some chill music. While this is happening, make sure that you take notes afterwards and just kind of, word vomit whatever you saw or felt. Okay? Don't put too much pressure on it as far as expectations of meeting this animal on your first meditation. If I were to do this, I would set some kind of intention hey, if there's any animal energy out there that I need to see or I need to hear a message from, please show up in my meditation or my dream or whatever, right? You can always, if you feel called, leave offerings in nature, safe herbs, water, or just clean up a space in nature. For example, if you live in a place where fresh water isn't available for the wildlife or strays, maybe leave out bowls of water for the stray cats in your alleyway or something. Purposely calling on a specific animal ally to help with spells is another way you could work with them. You can incorporate animal imagery into spell work, carvings, figurines, photos, drawings, all those kinds of things. And there's also a handful of divination decks that are particularly animal-centered. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to kind of tap into that sort of energy. All right, so say you're not looking to work with animal familiars. And I want to this is a podcast where I share my experience. I do not work with or call on animal spirits. I'm an animal lover. My house is full of them. We take care of a lot of them here on the ranch. But I don't necessarily work with animal energy. I still don't feel comfortable as a white person doing it. So it's not going to work in my practice. If I'm not confident about saying this is something that I feel like I need to do or want to incorporate into my work, if I'm not confident about it, I'm not going to be able to connect to it. So for me, there are plenty other things as a witch could go connect with. Okay. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just telling you these are because somebody's going to text me or DM me or email me and ask me, what is your animal ally? Do you work with animal familiars? And I'll just say it now. I do not. Do I pay attention to signs and symbols and animals? Yes, I do. If I were to, like I said earlier, if I were to be bombarded by a certain animal image that keeps popping up everywhere, I'm going to pay attention. And because I am pagan, which means I have a connection to deity or deities, I'm going to refer to them and go, hey, whichever animal corresponds with whatever deity, I'm assuming that deity is trying to get my attention. I hope that makes sense. I'm just trying to avoid questions in my inbox, which I don't mind, but I know this one will probably happen, so I thought I'd just do it now. Anyway, say you're somebody like me and you don't want to connect with an animal familiar or animal ally. You won't, maybe connecting with a spirit familiar is something that would be more up your alley. So let's talk about them. They're not pets. Spirit familiars are not pets. They're distinct entities. Often they can be past deceased people. Maybe even I was reading about some other witches' experiences with it, and some of them have claimed that their spirit familiar is one of their dead family members, which, okay. They can also be very old, very ancient, tricky. Some of them are tricky, and some are very, very wise. So pick your spirit familiar wisely. They can appear in the shape of animals, though, but they're not an animal. They're literally not an animal. They're just a spirit, okay? They're spirits choosing a form in some instances. So they act as protectors, messengers, and magical co-workers, basically. So how do they show up? They can show up through dreams, meditation, trance states, or even some kind of journeying work, if that's what you do. Sometimes you can just feel them. They're just a feeling. So you'll be doing spell work, or maybe you're meditating, or just having a quiet moment, and you just feel them. As a medium, that's something that's way more comfortable for me to work with than an animal spirit. I don't know why, it just is. So how can you connect with a spirit ally? Divination, tarot, pendulums, go find a medium. But it's something that you're going to want to have. You need to have the power of discernment to know who you're talking to make sure that when you are going, hey, is there a spirit out here that wants to work with me? You're not just letting some, weird thing in your house. Be smart about it. There is a book by Jason Miller called Consorting with Spirits, Your Guide to Working with Invisible Allies. I saw that. I really want to get it. I've got a bunch of his other books. Love the way he writes, and the information is always fucking top tier. So I have ordered that. I'm gonna read that, and I'll let you guys know how I feel about it. I'm sure I'll love it, but I'm gonna read it and see if that inspires me, because I haven't really worked with a spirit familiar in a really long time. So what are some ground rules if you're going to work with a spirit familiar? So just like spirits, you can say no. So if you're having a divination session, you're throwing some cards out, or you got a pendulum or something like that. I say pendulum weird. Pendulum. Jesus, I don't know. Anyway, say you're doing divination and you're trying to connect to a spirit, and you feel one come forth, or a card confirms it or something for you, and it doesn't feel right. You can say no. Say, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. Protect yourself with wards, circles, banishing rituals, that sort of thing. So you want to be smart about it, okay? A true familiar will respect your space and won't pressure or frighten you. You shouldn't be scared while you're working with them. Here's some signs of a genuine familiar relationship. They show up consistently, time over time, not just one time. It's a partnership, so you feel like you actually, you've got a coworker within your magical practice, not just Casper the Friendly Ghost that scares you every once in a while. And you should feel empowerment. Their presence should strengthen your craft, and it should not drain you, okay? And here's an ethical reminder. Don't go summoning a familiar from a book of shadows you found online, okay? The relationship is built, not conjured. Just be careful. You can invite, but spirit, they ultimately will say yes or no. And I know there are practices that do bend the will bend the will of the spirit and will force it to work with you. But as in most relationships, like a relationship that is wanted is going to be more useful than something that's coerced. Consent, that's the word I'm looking for. All right, some ethical considerations just in the whole animal ally, animal familiar type realm. Respect wildlife. Don't capture and try to domesticate a wild, fucking animal. Don't go out there and go, capture a fox and then say that that's your new familiar. Just don't do that. Don't feed or lure animals into cages. Don't do that, okay? Honor your relationship without ownership. And I know for some of us that's going to be really hard because I too would love to have a raccoon as a pet, but they are wild animals, and unless they need saving because they came to my doorstep and they're crying and sad and they don't have a mommy, which probably will never happen, I'm not going to be able to have a raccoon because they're wild fucking animals, okay? All right. So let's just do a little recap of what we talked about. So familiars, spirit familiars, and animal familiars are more about a personal working relationship within your magical craft. So you're going to see them, you're going to work with the actual energy or entity or whatever you want to call it. You're going to work with it regularly. You're going to involve them in your spell work. They're going to help you with that sort of thing. An animal ally is more about receiving lessons, signs, guidance. Sometimes that's long-term, sometimes that's temporary. So think like seeing signs and repeated sightings of a particular animal that's going to show you some kind of spiritual insight or personal insight about yourself. Okay, the other thing, I want to recap. Using the term spirit animal or totem animal is not usually something you want to use unless your culture originated and uses that term. So I come from the mayo-flavored peoples and do not use those terms. I use animal ally if I'm going to talk about that in that context. But again, I don't work with animals. Pay attention to the animals around you. It's another thing. Sometimes magic speaks through wings, paws, hooves. You know what I mean? So do pay attention. And I do pay attention. Anywho. I would love to know if anybody else works with animals. Do you have a relationship with a physical animal that you use in your magic? Do you have a spirit ally or spirit familiar that you work with? What is your flavor? Do you work with any of those things? So I hope this gave you something to chew on as far as what familiars are, what an animal ally is, and the ways that those terms can mean different things depending on your practice or your culture. I thought it was an important topic to talk about because I see this kind of stuff online and sometimes it's super misguided. Am I an expert in any of this particular subject? No. I have only enlisted the help of a spirit other than a deity a few times. And I don't know if I really consider them my spirit familiar or anything. But it's something I would like to explore a lot more. And that book by Jason Miller seems to be really recommended. So again, I'm going to read that and I will let you guys know my thoughts. So next week, it's not a class. This is a different subject. This one's going to be about psychic herbs and the 9 herbs charm. I am so stoked to talk about this because I love herbs. I work with herbs. Probably that's what I work with the most in my practice and in my daily life. Like, I love tea and I love using them in different ways in my mundane life as well. But I thought it would be cool to talk about the ones that are specifically used in psychic workings or to help develop your psychic abilities. So stay tuned for next time. And until then, stay witchy. Bye-bye.